hard to build the church because
14th
they
century.
were really thirsty all the time. So, and there was Eberhard, which had a hermitage here in Clausen, and he was praying to a statue of Mary, and he brought the statues everywhere. He went and he prayed to it, and many pilgrims came to pray to Mary as well. And he's stationed in Clausen, and that's the reason why the church construction began, because of the many pilgrims wanting to pray to Mary. And so the builders went to Eberhard to ask if he could pray to God, if God might help them a little bit in maybe reducing the temperature of the hot summer or something else. So, and this is what Eberhard did. Eberhard prayed, and one morning when the builders came to the building spot, there was a wine barrel standing there. And during the building process of the church, the wine barrel never emptied. It was full all the time. And so the builders had enough to drink, and they could build the church more easy than before when they were thirsty. Found in the year 16 BC by the Roman Emperor August, and it was called Augusta Treverorum, the city of August in the former land of the Treveri. So before the Romans conquered this area in 58 BC, the city of, or the area around Trier, modern Trier, was part of the territory of the Celtic tribe of the Treveri. So when the Romans founded Trier, there was no Celtic village. It was just part of the big territory of the Celtic tribe of the Treveri. So, and the Treveri, they lived close to nature, and they used one part of the river in the valley of Trier to go from one to the other side, because on this spot the river was very flat. So, and I'm really sure that the Celts dreamt of a bridge, but they didn't have the possibility or the knowledge to build a bridge in the water, and so they just used it to cross it, and of course they got wet feet. But so, in the Romans, they had the technology to build a bridge, and when they came in the peaceful period again in the year 18 BC, they constructed a wooden bridge. And there was only one wooden bridge over all the Mosel, and this was where 2 years later on the city of Augusta Treverorum was constructed, which means the city of Trier has already a tradition, a historical tradition, from the year 16 BC till today, which means the city is 2030 years old. So, and the Roman city was a city which had been completely planned. There were just straight streets going from north to south and from west to east. And on the crossing point between the two main axes, there had been the Forum. And the Forum was all the time in the middle of a Roman city. So, and the city was very much growing. So there were Roman politicians settling in the city, lots of tradesmen using this perfect infrastructure situation with the bridge, and they settled in the city, and so the city started to grow fast. And to have protection around the city, there was a big city wall constructed during the end of the 2nd century. And this city wall was immense, a good protection of the city. It had 48 occupation towers and 4 big gates. And one of the 4 gates is still standing today, and this is where our tour will end, at the Porto Nigra. The Porto Nigra was the Roman northern city gate. So, and then at the west, in the west at the bridge, there had been a gate, and in the south and in the east, the amphitheater had been constructed in such a manner so that it could have been used as a gate and as arena for the gladiator games. So gladiator games only did take place twice a year, and the rest of the time the amphitheater was used as the eastern city gate of Trier. So, and not only the city was growing fast, even the Roman Empire was growing fast as well, and by the end of the 3rd century there was a reform done, separating the Roman Empire into 4 big parts, and Trier became one of the 4 imperial residences. And imagine what it meant for a city having a status of imperial residence. Everything was done even more beautiful. A big palace was constructed, and of course the emperor lived in the city. So, and our most well-known emperor settling in the city of Trier was Constantine the Great. And Constantine the Great lived in Trier between the year 306 and 316. And in this 10 years, Trier was the biggest city north of the Alps. There was a population of 40 to 60,000 inhabitants living in the Roman city. And it was the most important city north of the Alps. So, and you know, even 1,700 years after Constantine, we are still living good on this 10 years of governmentalship of Constantine the Great. So, unfortunately, Roman period ended in the year 475. In the year 475, the Germanic tribe of the Franks conquered the city, and they destroyed the beautiful city, so that for about 100 years after this conquest of the Franks, no one lived in the city. The people were afraid of this big ruined area. So, during the Middle Ages, our bishop was head of the political affairs and head of the diocese. And this structure existed till the year 1794. In 1794 there was such a tiny enthusiastic Frenchman called Napoleon, and Napoleon wanted to rebuild the Roman Empire or restructure Europe, and in this conquest, or in this period, Trier became French. And the French, they changed, or they separated church from politics. And this reform was absolutely necessary, because in this period the city was crying for reforms, but under the bishop, the reforms were not done. But the French, they just came here and they changed everything. So unfortunately, Napoleon was a tiny little bit too enthusiastic, which means 1815 Congress of Vienna, and Trier became Prussian. So when the Prussians, they first of all thought of Trier as a tiny unimportant city close to the border of France and Luxembourg. And in 1850, quite late compared to the rest of Germany, Trier was connected to the train. So which means the first train connection was installed to Trier. So, and in 1944, during World War II, end of 1944, Trier was bombed. And even in the beginning of 1945, Trier was bombed, and so 1945, the Americans freed an empty city. Because the city was evacuated completely because it had been too dangerous to live in the city. And after World War II, about 44% of the inner city was destroyed, but you today cannot see the damages of World War II anymore, even only if you have a very close look to the facade of the houses. And even only if you've seen the pictures from how the city looked like after World War II. So in 1986, the UNESCO declared every Roman building and the complex of the Church of Our Lady and the cathedral as UNESCO World Heritages. So and now we are entering Trier. This is the beginnings of the city, and in every German city you can find the big stores at the beginning of the city, and there you can just drive by with your car and shop everything you need for your daily affairs. So, and in the year 2014 the population of Trier is about 104,000 inhabitants. And among these 104,000 inhabitants, we have 20,000 students, which means it's a very young and lively city. And we have about 4 to 6 million day tourists coming to visit the city every year. And additionally to the 4 to 6 million day tourists, we have about 800,000 overnight stays in the year. So, and this is what I meant with the sentence, we are living good on the period of Constantine the Great, even 1,700 years later, because this huge amount of money this huge amount of tourists and the money the tourists are bringing is the biggest employee in the city and the region. So, and so after Burger King on the right hand side, which is a typical German restaurant, so I like to make jokes as well. So, and right hand side here, there had been a former French military area. All these houses, who look absolutely the same, had been part of the French military area until the year 2000. In Trier, the French military was stationed, and in Trier the second largest garrison of the French army was stationed, and this was all from World War, because this was the occupation area of the French. Until the year 2000 there were many French soldiers, and then they left, and all the military areas had to be reused, and they were mainly used for flats, for living houses, and they are used as well to inherit offices, or so for offices and so on. So, and when you look on the right hand side, you can see the Mosel, so it's on our right hand side, and here in the Middle Ages had been the fisher and shipmen's quarter of Trier, and the fisher and shipmen's quarter of Trier was not protected via a wall. It was laying outside the middle-aged city, and the middle-aged city was only half as big as the Roman one. So, and from this side the houses look a little bit unspectacular, but when you look at the houses from the Mosel side, you see there in the inside there are lots of tiny restaurants and bars where you could drink the wine and eat a little bit and enjoy the view over the Mosel. So in this part today, the fisher and shipmen's quarter from the Middle Ages is today full of bars and restaurants, and it invites everyone to spend a summer evening there. So, and I'm sure you realize there's lots of traffic. So at the moment we are driving along the main north to south traffic exit through the city. So, and on the right hand side you can see the Emperor William Bridge, and this is the second bridge constructed on top of the Mosel. The first one was the Roman one, and this one was constructed in the year 1913, and the Prussian Emperor William opened this bridge. He was here for the big opening of this bridge, and this was a good idea from the Prussians to show the inhabitants that they are caring about the city by giving them a second bridge, and this bridge was absolutely necessary. So on the left hand side you can see the former Renaissance wing of the monastery of St. Martin, which is today used as a student's residence. And then on the left hand side you can see beautiful villas from the 19th century, and when they were constructed there was just a small promenade separating these houses from the river. And as I told you, today one of the biggest traffic acts through the city, so which means living quality is reduced. So, and on the left hand side there is the former wing of the monastery of St. Catherine, today part of our technical university. And on the left hand side you can see the Baroque wing of the former monastery of St. Irmina, which is today used as a student's residence, a senior's residence. And in the underground there is a Roman structure still existing, and here close to the river there had been many Roman storehouses, and one of the storehouses survived in the underground, and on top you have the Baroque wing of the former monastery of St. Irmina. And the Roman building is today used as a wine cellar because the climate is perfect for the wine to produce perfect taste. So on the right hand side you can see one of two cranes from the middle-aged harbor. So the first one from the 15th, the other one from the 18th century, and they have mainly the same technique in the inside. There is a huge treadmill in the inside, and 3 men had to walk in the treadmill, and with the power the roof could be rotated, and so the crane ships rotated as well, and so the ships could be and uploaded in one period. So today the Mosel is a little bit deeper. In the Middle Ages the cranes were directly connected to the Mosel. And as well on the right hand side, when you look through the trees you can see the Roman bridge. So when the stone pillars of this bridge were constructed in the 2nd century and in the Roman period, and they are still standing today even if we have 1,800 years later. So, and by looking at the stone pillars it gives us a first hint of how extraordinary the Roman building technology had been. So they constructed stone pillars which are standing in the water unimpressed for more than 1,800 years. So the Roman street level had been a wooden street level because a wooden street level was easy to be destroyed when there might have been enemy attack. And at the beginning and at the ending of the bridge there was a gate taking care of the city laying behind the wall. So in the arcades you can see on top of the stone pillars were added on the bridge in the 13th century under the governmentalship of the Archbishop Balduin of Luxembourg. And the street level you have today is a modern street level, but the weight of the cars and the buses is transported by the Roman stone pillars unimpressed. And This amazes me all the time, that we are using a bridge which had been constructed in Roman period, and we're just using it even today without any problem. And it was already the third bridge the Romans constructed here. The first one in the year 18 BC, a wooden bridge. The second one in the year 71 AD, another wooden bridge, and the stone pillars of this bridge were constructed in the year 144 AD. So when now we are driving along the main west to east axis of the Roman city, which means we are quite in the middle of the city. And on the right hand side you can see the excavations of the Barbara bath. They were constructed as well in the 2nd century, and they were, during the construction period, the second largest bathing area all over the Roman nation. And the excavation you can see today is only showing us 1/3 of this big bathing area. Only the Trajan's bath in Rome had been bigger than this bathing area here in Trier. So, and on the left hand side you can see an occupation tower from the Middle Age city wall. So all the time you see these tree alleys in the inner city, you have to think of the Middle Age city wall. Because the tree alley is showing us on 4 sides of the city the situation of the former middle-aged city wall. So which means we are driving in the middle of the Roman city, but we are already on the southern end of the middle-aged city, and both cities started on the same spot in the north, which means the middle-aged city was only half as big as the Roman city had been. And in the 13th century, in the Middle Ages, we have again a counting, or we have a number. There was a counting of about 11,000 inhabitants.